welcome back to Ejo Eden with Teen Eden. Today I'm going to do a critique on the book called Just Jake. By the way, to make this very clear to you YouTube monitors and everyone else, this is not my book. It is written by Jake Marcionette, published by Penguin Random House, and I'm also not getting monetized for this, so I'm not getting any money for it. I just think it's a good book. If you want to read it, okay. If you don't want to read it, okay. I'm fine either way. So I'm not monetizing this, and this is not my book, to make it very, very clear. So basically what this book is about is it's about a middle schooler, high schooler, I'm not quite sure his age, his dad, his best friend and his dad, his sister Alexis, and the four quad boys. Which are the rowdy little neighbor boys next door. They all sign up for this camp called Camp Wild Survival, or CWS, that is run by a TV celebrity called Thunder Banks. And there's a competition going on, and they're just trying to survive out in this camp. So that's what this basically is about. If you want to read it, cool. If you don't, cool. Either way, let's get on to it. Alright. So first part, I want to talk about the camp waiver, because that's just funny, which is like right here, as you can see. I don't know if you can read that, but that's the camp waiver. I gotta read part of that. Camper acknowledges that CWS, or Camp Wild Survival, is hazardous to their health and full of inherent risks such as 1. Wild animal attacks, including Sasquatch encounters. What? 2. Attack from fellow campers dying from thirst or hunger or both. 3. Their own potential starvation or dehydration. Okay, I actually think 2 and 3 are kind of the same thing, but anyway. 4. Death by falling trees, tree limbs, and or meteors. 5. Extreme weather, heat, cold, humidity, ice, rain, fog, lightning, and or a ridiculous combination of all. 6. Poisonous plants, ticks, and too many venomous snakes to mention. Okay, that's funny. Honestly, I don't think most, meteors, that barely ever happens. Sasquatch, we don't know if that exists or not. But honestly, most of these things are actually real and they can happen to you. But honestly, if you're acting smart in the woods, you're acting prepared, most of that is not going to happen to you. You have to be dumb in the woods in order for dumb things to happen to you, is how basically it's taking it. So, go on. Finally, down below, death waiver. I understand I may die as CWS, and do not blame, hold responsible, or assign any liability to the Great Thunder Banks or to Thunder Banks, Inc. Okay, that's hilarious, guys. I don't think Jake and his family were reading the fine print when they signed this. Otherwise, they probably never would have gone to this camp. Fine print is so important. My family's had issues with contracts, specifically land contracts. Anyway, reading the fine print is really important. It's annoying, and they make it tiny, so you can't read the fine print. But if you read the fine print, you're going to know actually what you're going into. So my advice for this is read the fine print, read the fine print, read the fine print. Sorry guys, my camera's wanting to slip off. Using my computer to film. Okay. So that's basically my advice for this. One thing before I want to go on, make it clear, one thing that was in my last time I tried filming this, because this is the third time I tried filming this video, but it basically, one point I'm going to get on, I'm not going to read the book about it, but basically, to let you guys know, this survival camp is being filmed, and most survival shows, unless some are legit, some actually they're trying to survive, but most of them, they're acted out. They're not actually out there in the woods. They're more like in a hotel or motel or something. So, just to make it clear, it's also a TV show, what they're going through. So, it's just a bunch of craziness. So now I'm actually going to get on to some survival tips. So now, I'm going to go on to about what you do and the most important things to do first in a survival situation and how to find the best spot for a shelter. So, I'm going to read you pages 61, 64, and then 66, 69. I might read all that, I might not. So if you guys will give me a minute, I'll turn to that. Alright. Alright, this is Chapter 7, Gone Fishing. Immediately, Mr. Boyd took charge of our group. Under his leadership, we had nothing to fear. Mr. Boyd was a former Army Ranger who served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. A man of few words, he knew a whole lot about hunting and surviving. My dad was more than happy to listen and follow his instructions. Alright, Mr. Boyd, if anyone's gonna know about survival, it's Mr. Boyd, because he was actually a soldier. They're trained to not only know how to take lives, but also preserve their own. And they have good survival skills. I know because two of my uncles were in the armed forces as well. I can't remember which part of the armed forces, but the armed forces. Alright, so, gonna read on. Alright, guys and ladies, said Mr. Boyd, smiling at Alexis. The first thing we need to do is find a spot for our camp and then work together on building shelter and fire. That's not what Thunder recommends, interrupted Alexis. Yeah, Thunderbank said you should always try to find food if you're lost. Maybe we can hunt a cow or something cool like that, suggested Merritt Quinlan. Remember that time Thunder parachuted from space and landed on top of a freezing glacier? Gushed Jared. What's the first thing he did? Asked Alexis. He trapped the muskox, screamed the Quads. Yep, exactly. He barbecued the ribs and slept inside its gutted body to protect himself from the cold, said Alexis. Looking at Mr. Boyd disbelief. No disrespect, sir, but Thunderbanks is on TV. Obviously, he's an expert. No. Just because someone's online or a TV expert on TV, that doesn't mean they're an expert. They may know some things that may be true or may be false, but I wouldn't take all your information from the TV, especially with the way the news is these days. Just I wouldn't. Just because they're on TV doesn't mean they're an expert. Alright, yeah, about that, he's dead wrong, stressed Mr. Boyd. Kids, your body can last weeks without food. But in some challenging survival situations, you won't live 24 hours without water. And if it gets cold enough, you won't last a night without fire and shelter. Yes, Mr. Boyd did all the talking for me. That is exactly the case. Yeah, your body can last 30 days without food, but your body can last, I think, at max top 3 days without water. And in like some cases, you definitely need shelter for that as well. And one thing that's important with shelter as well is depending on your situation, it really depends what kind of shelter you build. There are types of shelters you can build. You can build a tarp shelter, which requires knotting skills, rope, and the tarp, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't. Okay, I'm not gonna get into that. Then there's a lean-to structure, which requires a heat source. Doesn't mean much tools to build. You can literally use the sticks and logs. And then there's little hutches. I can't remember what they're called. But those don't need a heat source, but they can usually only fit as one person. However, when me and my friends built one, we were able to fit 4 people in there. But we made a huge one. But basically, that. And one thing that's also important is you never want your door to face is the direction of the wind is blowing. Like if the wind is blowing north, you want the door of your shelter to face south because otherwise you're going to get a current of cold air blowing in your shelter and which is going to freeze you out. Another thing, depending on where you're at, like if you're in a area that floods easy or you're trying to like hide from enemies, like if you're in a war situation, like if you're a soldier, also depends on what kind of shelter you build and where you build your shelter. So one thing that's always important, one thing you always want to guarantee with building a shelter is you want your shelter, if you're in a survival situation, relatively close to a water source. Like you don't want to hike for a mile to get water. That is not efficient. So you want your shelter to be as close to a water source as possible. And you never want it to face the direction of the wind is blowing. Those are 2 things you definitely want when you're building a shelter. So to go on, we're going to talk about food next. So if you give me a minute, I'm going to, fire and food. Give me a minute, I'm going to turn to page 85. Wait, actually. Okay, here we go. Alright, it didn't take too long for my group to find enough branches, logs, and bark to make a decent-looking shelter. It helped a lot that the quads were wood-collecting machines. They're like 4 tiny beavers in a rush to build their dam. Michael, Dad, and I just did what we were told. None of us knew anything about surviving. All we wanted was to be warm and dry. Once the shelter was ready, Mr. Boyd asked if anyone was interested in learning how to start a fire. Everyone was, so we all took a seat. It's easy. Take out your very own lightning strike survival matches available for purchase at thunderbanks.com, screamed Miracle. Okay, that sounds like an infomercial. Or a magnifying glass to focus the sun's light. That always works, offered Jarrett. But what if happens when Thunder's matches are wet, or when he doesn't pack his magnifying glass, quizzed Alexis. Never leave home without your nor'easter survival torch. Have no shame in your gang when the weather is lame. You'll always get a flame with nor'easter, or the quads. Are you kidding? Using a lighter is part of Thunder's survival teachings? Asked Mr. Boyd. How else do you start a fire? Asked Leslie. There are literally dozens of ways, and none of the methods you just mentioned are practical survival techniques, said Mr. Boyd. Do you think primitive man had lighters? Matches? Yeah, they did not have lighters and matches. Lighters and matches are good if you're going on just a regular camping trip. But if you're actually trying to survive out in the wild, then those will not work out for you. You have to use other methods, and there are tons of different methods. There are flint and steel, the bow drill technique, the fire plow, or two-man friction drill technique. There another method you could use, which, by the way, do it with parent supervision because it could get very hot because you're using magnesium, because you're doing steel and magnesium. Sorry, my dogs are running at the door. But it's a little square. On one side, you shave off magnesium flakes, and then on the other side, you have steel, and you try to make sparks from that. So then on the magnesium, which will catch your tinder on fire. By the way, do not do this without parent supervision, because when you light the magnesium on, it'll flash, and it'll get up to over 2,000 degrees hot. So do not do this without parent supervision. And also, by the way, it's a million times harder than it looks. So one thing I can guarantee is if you can't light a fire with the flint and magnesium on the first try, the next time you light it with like a regular fire, it's gonna get hot. Just to let you guys know. So that is one thing with fire. Now I gotta go on to page 85, and we're gonna talk about food. Actually, okay. Here we go. Thunder's staff are also going to review some gathering fundamentals, like identifying edible plants and safe mushrooms. But he hoped they wouldn't waste too much time on that unimportant stuff. We don't need to rely on ingredients to stay alive. BTW, yes you do. Basically, we're all animals. We need meat to live. It's full of energy and protein. And meat could be the difference between life and death in the bush, stressed Thunder. Yes, it is important to have meat, because not your muscles will start to eat themselves because they have nothing else to eat. But greens are so important. I like to eat meat. If I could, I would only eat meat because honestly, there's not that many vegetables I like to eat. But I have to eat vegetables, otherwise you can have major issues. Your body literally starts shutting down. Without vitamin A, you can't see. You lose your vision. Without vitamin C, you get low immune health, which means you get sick more often. Without vitamin D, which you can also get from the sun, but you can't get enough from the sun, you gotta eat it as well, you could get depressed. That's why people get cranky in the winter. And fiber. Fiber is probably the most important one of all. Without fiber, you can't really digest. You have bowel issues. That's the only way I can say without being awkward. But without those things, we're going to start shutting down, which is not good at all, honestly. Okay, so that's pretty much it for my survival tips for this book. By the way, to make it clear again, this is not my book. It is written by Jake Marcionette, published by Penguin Random House. And I'm not being monetized for this book. If you want to read it, great. If you don't want to read it, great. I guess in a way I'm kind of supporting it, but I'm not getting money from it. So if you are interested in this book, there's a website down below you can check. Like I said, not monetizing it. If you're just curious how to get this book, you can check it out down below in the description. Also, if you'd like me to do more videos like this, like comparing survival techniques in books, please like, subscribe if you want to, and majorly leave a comment down below. Leaving comments down below will help me know what content to make for you guys. So I really hope you guys like this book. I'm gonna go, let you guys go, because I know you got other things to do today, or whatever you're doing. And I gotta catch you up there, homesteaders.